I never expected to be so hated. Sure, I was a blank and thus all sorts of disturbed looks or other signs of not being liked were common. Maybe it was why I avoid normal humans when possible. While the reclamation of the holdfast domain continues, with some ease, I also tally my loses and lament, feeling my heart bleed inside. Of course, I won the battle even when ambushed by a gigantic coalition of chaos warbands and traitor legions, even titans. Outnumbered 1,000 to 1, and won with a snap of my fingers. Yet at the same time, I lost. I still had to use the Tesseract offensively. That brought a host of potential problems, just like it did before, at Fenris and Terra and Cadia. No enemy will simply wait for death, and thus they would search for a method to resist or disrupt the Tesseract, even if they didn't know exactly what I had. Chaos had not only the Mechanicum tech priests, but also hundreds of Xenos races with their own advanced tech, which made the development of anti-transport devices only a matter of urgency and resources. Necrons were also awakening in larger numbers, thus bringing out examples of their technology, which would inevitably also fall into the heretic hooks of the Dark Mechanicum. These were not the apex Necrons that won the war in heaven, but mere shadows of themselves, with cogitating and memory engrams scattered or destroyed by their long sleep. Someone like that Vashta could make use of the Necron tech, and create scary weapons. It took only a single day in the time-accelerated labyrinth to recover all injured or lost Astartes, even creating Primaris replacements for those who died, using my stock of newly born children accelerated to induction age. I did impregnate 200 women every week on average, thus 10,000 children in a year. I would never run out of Astartes, not even with such battles every month. Building new Texorcist wards for the new Astartes took much longer than the mere decade to upgrade their bodies. Gene Seed was also quick to collect as decades flew by in the Tesseract. I even started a third successor chapter, The Grieving. I was indeed grieving for the loss of half my Space Marines, but I also knew this wasn't the end. Just another minor battle against endless chaos traitors. Even if I killed 1 million traitors a day ago, more Space Marines, even the new Primaris would defect and join the traitor rank soon. It was inevitable. The last Chaos God, Xeonch, was left all alone now, free to plot and infect any human he could reach. And obviously he did. Perhaps, no, it couldn't work. Not by myself. I failed with Nurgle too, and I did have quite a lot of help from divine-level entities. Even Ahriman was strong enough to escape or ambush me, not to mention his patron Dark God. And now, what was left of Nurgle was being hunted and used as a leashed beast by Chaos sorcerers, almost like a dark, Chaos mockery of the Necron's use of the broken Catan shards. Sister Decima rapped her knuckles on my head, lifting my mood. We continue. I spoke in her mind. Of course we do. Another Orc safari? She asked jokingly on the implant data link. Truth to be told, once Decima came out and enveloped the system with her immense pariah aura, any Orc wog would lose its potency and make the Orcs decay into axe-running cucumbers, and simple practice targets even for the Auxilia. Probably not. Orcs can be fought by any Imperial forces. Necrons and Tyranids, not so much. I answered with a sigh. Duty before pleasure. I am not of use against Necrons. Decima said as she walked away. Click. Amberly Vale appeared before me, eyes dark from lack of sleep. I am not happy, my dear. I spoke in a sad voice. She declined to answer. Her Miss Friendly Fire nickname had turned against her, and me as well. It was worrisome to know she could flare out with powers able to devastate my troops so easily. Almost 100,000 sentinels and their pilots were fried to slag by unleashed lightning, as well as some blank Astartes that were too close. Almost 100 of my sons, including many of her own bodyguards. You realize I can't allow you to deploy with my troops again. You almost matched that Chaos Titan Legion in effective damage. Against my troops. I growled a little. I'll leave. She spoke in a soft voice. You will travel with the mourners to Terra. I do have some artifacts to send to the Emperor, and your credentials will grant them faster approval. I explained in a mild voice. As you say, Lord Lancefire. She muttered in a subdued tone, eyes cast down. As for your own problem, I think Titan will have a way. All their Grey Knights are powerful psychers, after all. I added in a tired voice. A low chance. She spoke in a disheartened tone. And don't send the C++ report by warp. It's stupid to hope the enemy doesn't read your mail. I suspect it's how they prepared the ambush as well, I concluded with a glance at Lash, and sent the Inquisitor back to her locked room for now. I can always eat her. Or let Canis do it. The Catan said with a hungry tone. 1,000,000 Chaos Marines for 1,000 of my sons. It was a decent trade. The Emperor will forgive her. Maybe even promote her. I answered with a sad smile. The Catan watched me for a minute, then nodded his giant wolf head. You are starting to learn how gods actually think. Is not very different from your rogue trader methods, just the scale is larger. You've grown a bit too. A few more centimeters, another few more women on my bed. A few minutes each, and duty was done. I could taste poison now, and be fine. Slowly, everything about me became better. More, 1,000,000 years would make me a Primarch. I mused softly. A giant blank Primarch able to fuck non-stop. Unceasing duty to populate the galaxy with my direct descendants. Still thinking small, young human. Try a few billion years. The old Catan proposed with a wry tone. My lifespan would end way sooner. I am not a Catan. I replied with an amused head shake. Think of Canis as well. He is now soulbound to you. The more you grow. Lash said with a glance at my wary wolf. Woof. Woo. Ooh. Canis howled, possibly stealing my thoughts. I could make a myth come true. A wolf god eating sons as snacks. It would take 100 years. You think the universe will let me just ascend, without throwing more problems at me? I asked in a cynical tone. The alien wolf just stared at me. No words, letting me reach the obvious conclusion by myself. I didn't have to get involved. The Emperor and his Primarchs were now back. Patroclus and his Tesseract could solve many problems for the Imperium. Victor could keep the dynasty safe of the other side. As for the Lamenters, I could spare my good Tesseract. Maybe give it to Valerian. We'll see. There are other things to prepare first. I said in a careless tone. But I already knew I will do it. Not in one go, but in week-long vacations. Train more Astartes as well. I could train many Astartes in 1,000,000 years. I could also speed up the clone skeins. Create trillions of warp-occluded clones, and send them forth to colonize and explore the fringe, guarded by blank Astartes. Even more blank tech marines and tech priests. There could be 1 billion livable planets out there. Still, I did have a smarter partner in crime, waiting for me at Forge Machine. The Speranza would know how to proceed. As the Goth Mechonicus fleet arrived to take charge of the desiccated corpse of the C++ holdfast, I gathered my own ships and departed for Forge Mazoa. The mourners left for Terra with Inquisitor Vale on board, as well as tons of artifacts and some new STCs, including real fragments recovered and cleaned by the Texorcists. What a useful clade, these strange tech priests. I could make them more popular wherever I went. It only took a week to train thousands of them after all. Maybe I did have to learn how to think on a larger scale. Forge Mazoa was already working hard to complete their trade with me, albeit in their usual low-yield manner of hand manufacture. Another week of bothersome system-wide manipulation resulted in the Forge world becoming an order of magnitude more productive, with faraway comets and asteroids brought close for mining or new forts. I even spent a day inside the Tesseract to accelerate and complete the clone skeins production method and gene crucibles, until we managed to find the right balance of mild blankness and physical robustness needed by the Forge's workforce. 100 of my blank daughters were selected and approved to become new Mazoa tech priests, including the Texorcist training. Their children would form a new caste of blank Forge Worlders, to pilot and captain the Mazoa Basilicone Astra capital ships with no risk of defection to chaos. Leaving the Forge with advanced samples of demiurge tech would not be an advantage if they went unsupervised, or perhaps turned renegade in the future. Did I also use the time to gain access to the Astarias Grav Tank STC, and then improve it with more demiurge tech? Who knows? I deny all accusations of tech heresy. But indeed, with both a Void Shield and a Weave Shield, the flying tank would be a beast on any battlefield, and the new weapons could only improve that. My Burst V cannon was the modified Volcano cannon that fired continuous lower-yield beams like a multi-laser would, instead of a single, energy-draining beam like the Shadowsword Baneblade. 2 such V cannons in the turret would outrange and outperform the original accelerator guns by an order of magnitude. Thanks, Trazin. You do great work. I did add a Hyperios_missile_launcher at the back of the tank's turret, since heavy tanks did make a valuable target for enemy air attacks. I also replaced the useless heavy stubber with an iron beamer, giving it a far better close defense weapon, without ammunition. 2 tarantula turrets were to be bolted on the sides, and provide twin triple-barreled multi-laser firing arcs for anti-infantry combat. The frontal twin bolters were replaced with twin-linked Burst V lances, once more increasing the firing rate and damage by an order of magnitude, while discarding ammunition. Other than plating the heavy tank with blackstone instead of ceramite, the design remained much the same. It was far more durable and powerful though, which may be needed in the years ahead. For the hard work I was repaid with a contract for 1,200 Mazoa pattern Astarias tanks, to be delivered in batches on warpless ships traveling towards the fringe. I only took 20 almost finished Grav tanks with me as I departed, as to give my tech marines some experience in working with the new Mechonicus wonders, but I managed to replace the lost sentinels from the Forge's vaults. Forge Mazoa instead gained 10 billion hardy clones to toil in their factoriums and space docks, as well as new Volkite rifles for their Scutari and improved weave shielding and warp shielding in the form of Gela Rampart generators, rated about an order of magnitude stronger and more stable than the older Gela fields used in the Imperium. As for the Deus mining drones, they were outproducing manual asteroid mining by an order of magnitude at least, and that will climb even higher as more drones and better logistics were developed. Thinking it would take less time to travel, we headed out for the Jericho Moor Warp Gate and arrived in the eastern fringe far sooner, saving months of travel time. We are back under Big Brother's overwatch, Lash said with a knowing voice. I suspect Zorhu Lash did peek through the warp gate even before we crossed into Jericho Reach. I spoke with a level tone. I knew what the trapped Catan could do, when he felt like it. We can butcher some Tyranids, as there is a decent hive fleet battling over the Iriac system. The Catan added with a wolfish grin. Iriac? That seems important. How did the Tyranids get? Oh. The Hadex anomaly is closed now. I realized a minute later. And also, the Death Watch and their silly Ordo Xenos Inquisitors did keep a number of Tyranid specimens at the Watch_Fortress_Iriac. Paint a big target on your back, then act surprised when the Tyranids come? Perhaps I should help, and maybe gift some of my blank Marines to the Death Watch as well? Not to be callous, but the Primaris were twice as fast and strong, while the firstborn blanks had mostly achieved veteran status by the mere fact of surviving my own stupid mistakes. Whoa! Canis encouraged me with a loud howl. Indeed, my faithful friend. There will be loot to get at Iriac as well. The Death Watch should have nice stuff. All ships, form on the Black Lament as we travel to Iriac. Prepare for Tyranid action. I ordered on the Vox, as to let my people know we would change procedures once more. Since Tyranids didn't use cogitators and other mechanical devices, we will not fly in autistic mode, and be free to use the auspexes and auguries at maximum strength for higher range and accuracy with our weapons. You should also call more ships from back home. It looks like a big hive fleet. Lash commented in a caustic tone. I should, you say? I mused inward. Perhaps, but I rather not. The eternal lament at Machine Forge would still take decades to armor up and outfit with Nova cannons and point defense batteries, same as the victorious Lancefire now at Forge Retribution. The Singularity battleship was still badly damaged from the Stygius Crusade, as were most of the battle barges and cruisers. Escort carriers could come, but their corvettes and fighters were also depleted. As for the warp engine destroyers and frigates, they would fail to pierce the silence in the warp and wouldn't provide much firepower anyways. No, for better or worse, what I had now was all I could spare. Retreat was also an option, if we failed too badly. Is there something you need at Irayak? I asked the Katana after my slightly smarter brain did a full loop and reviewed his words from the beginning. There is another shard of mine. And some nice loot for you. Powerful artifacts. Lash admitted with a wise look. Librarian Menelau walked beside me and hugged Canis, while giving Lash a stinking eye. His left eye had been fried by Inquisitor Vale's electric outburst, and now sported a bionic replacement. We are not at fleet strength, father, he observed in a low voice. But we have the fortress and Sister Decima. And worst case, Lash will bring us out. I replied in a flat voice, while daringly patting the wolf Catan on his nose. Or he will eat us, when we are weak. Menelau muttered with distrust, still staring at Lash like it was some sort of abomination. I will not eat a Lancefire. Your father would fist me with a Titan's power claw. Lash growled in audible words. I would. I did do that to Slaanesh, so perhaps I would. Side Titans were quite awesome. Go and prepare, Menelau. We have to try and save Irayak. I spoke in a lamenting voice. As the librarian blank walked away, I glanced at Lash. You revealed yourself. He already knew. Perhaps your Empress speaks to him, in his dreams. The Catan exclaimed with a surprised tone. We did enter the Astronomicon range during the Morning Crusade. And librarians were taught how to read the Emperor's tarot, as well as glean information from the Astronomicon itself. I sighed and stared at the nearly empty galactic map in front of me. From Irayak onward, there was only darkness. Barely dots of lights obtained from stellar cartography, but no exploration data. Such a task I chose for myself. To bring light and knowledge into the darkest corners of the galaxy. As the fleet drew closer to Irayak, we began to sense the englobing tyrannid jaws made of biological ships and countless attack organisms on board. Hungry little bastards. Imperial ships. We request urgent aid. A Vox transmission arrived from a fleeing Deathwatch frigate, chased by 20 fast and nimble tyrannid ships. This is Pef Lancefire and the Lamentus Space Marines. Stand by to be rescued. I replied with a grandiose voice. Some goodwill should help, a bit later. And click. The frigate vanished in the Tesseract, frozen in stasis while my battleships fired their long lances and bisected the destroyer-sized bioships into small barbecue-sized slices. Looting was never easier. First thing I noticed in the frozen frigate, my old lover Ezu_Grail and her entourage of useful people like Lex mechanics, sages and hired killers. Running away to bravely call for reinforcements. I brought her out and into my lap, for old time's sake. Ezu, my dear. What do you know about this Tyrannid High Fleet? I asked politely while fondling her boob with my free hand. Pef. You've changed? I mean, you've grown quite a lot. She observed cogently, while avoiding my question. You can taste the lance later, my dear Inquisitor. The Tyrannids? I continued in a slightly harsher voice, and pushing the blank aura a bit. It was an accident? The violet biosamples breakout has nothing to with me. She defended herself in a rather specific way. I didn't even know of any breakout. I see, nothing to do all? Were you failing to find any support against the Tyrannid threat, so you decided to show them? I mused to myself, not that it was a huge stretch to make. The woman stared blankly at the screen, as we approached the Tyrannid fleet at best speed, maybe? she muttered a minute later. I drew back the aura and sighed. And to think this was one of the stable inquisitors. I saw far worse, but this came close too. We'll talk later. Take station on that chair and log the engagement for further analysis. Lady Vale had to return to Terra for urgent matters, I said in a level voice, and pushed her away. Canis stood up and poked his nose at the fearless inquisitor, who absently petted the wolf and sat on the empty chair. Entering visual range, my lord. Calculating enemy numbers. The Auspex station officer declared while busy imputing Auspex data into the machine spirit. My tesseract was already in range, and showed us a losing battle. Although the watch station was an upgraded Ramil's star fort, with enough macro batteries to shatter a battleship if they hit, the Tyranids had brought far more than a single bioship. Nova cannon strike, on my mark. I ordered while sending targeting data to the fleet, using my own mind impulse unit and the LASCOM data links. We were close enough to use lightspeed comms, and had little chance of being jammed by a technological enemy. While the long-range targeting was being processed, I also primed 100 Nova mines in the Tesseract, as cover for my next action. Mark. I ordered on the data link, and the heavy cruisers fired a rolling barrage of wide-area Nova explosions on top of the Tyranids, while my mines detonated inside the largest bioships I could find. 1,000,000 escort-sized bioships were simply pulverized by the massed explosions, so I used the blinding glare of Nova explosions to expel even more bioships into the sun, while also extracting some powerful tyrants and other biotitans for my own Xeno Auxilia. I was getting a bit low on expendable munitions, so I had to replace them with screeching, clawing, walking ones. While the cruisers reloaded their Nova cannons, I began to use the Immaterium beam to snuff out the largest bioships, and fired the Black Lament's own Nova cannons at any decent concentration of bioships still left alive. And if each of my shots vaporized thousands of enemy bioships, it was simply luck. Not that I would cheat and send them to burn into the sun, right? Damn Tyranids. The more I killed, the more they sent. It might even work against regular Navy ships, or even Deathwatch ships. Not against me though. Already the shock of synapse loss sent the Tyranids into hibernation, so I gave the go-ahead for lance battery engagement, while our escort carriers began to unload their escort craft. Librarian Menelau, you have fleet command. I spoke clearly so everyone on the bridge would hear this. Then I stood up and walked towards my room, while a subdued inquisitor followed me. Yes, chapter master. Menelau answered in a dutiful tone as he sat down in the command throne. Lash glanced at me, then decided to remain on his comfortable blackstone dais, and keep an eye on Menelau, for his own sake. Canis just growled once and followed me, lightly warning Lash to behave. Quite a feast for my soul here. Lash sent on my implant as I left the bridge. I know. I am a good provider, aren't I? I quipped back, as I made way for Canis to pass me and enter my bedroom first. It may have been a callous, heretical deal with the foul Xenos, but as long as Lash consumed Tyranid souls I didn't mind. It might even weaken the hive mind. The energy could never be destroyed, only transferred. Perhaps even more so with souls. No wonder all gods in this universe battled fiercely for more souls. The Catan were no different, and perhaps even worse in some ways. Stand guard outside, brother. The Inquisitor has too many secrets. I asked my white scar's bodyguard. Dangerous as well. He warned me with a wary glance at the frail-looking woman. I just slammed the door in his face. So? Make up sex now or after? I asked as I retrieved a bottle of expensive Dimasec. I'm so fucked. The woman muttered as she grabbed the bottle and took a long swig. Not yet. But yes. The Deathwatch will find out, once they have time to investigate. What were you thinking? I grumbled and sat on my adamantium chair, which groaned under the Terminator's plate weight. I was thinking, it would be a glorious sacrifice. I may become a martyr, and force them to admit the Tyranids are the greatest threat to humanity, Ezu exclaimed in a loud voice, and sat on the floor to drink even more. An Inquisitor martyr. Ha, I laughed out loud. I even played the game. You also reek of Xeno's tech, Pef Lancefire. When they catch you. She growled at me with red eyes. Must have been crying lately. I am not the one in trouble, dear Ezu. Plus I have a warrant, signed by the Emperor's hand. I can do whatever I want, and is not only lawful but divinely ordained, I declared with fake pride, even waving my golden glowing scroll in her face. Wait. You can make this go away. If you use this. She realized with a hopeful voice. I nodded patiently. It was far better to be begged. And why would I do that? I will do anything you ask of me. Anything at all. She pleaded with tears in her eyes. I think she means kinky sex, but I wanted far more. I could use someone this desperate. Not for long, as the crisis will pass, but right here was the right place indeed. Ordo Xenos did have a huge influence with the Death Watch. Get me to the Omega Vault? I asked in a soft voice. Her blurry eyes focused in a second, regaining her steel. That's a lot to ask for. It would burn all my Death Watch favors. She spoke in a steely voice. I think the vault will open for me. And, you will lose those favors anyways. Better to gain something from the loss. I countered with a shrug. Truth would come out. You think it will open? She asked with wondering eyes. I grabbed her bottle and took a long gulp as well. Almost certain. There is something there waiting for me, and me alone. By the Emperor. If you do enter the Omega Vault. She realized with a start. I just smiled. A rogue trader needed valuable things to trade. A single large hive ship remains untouched by our ships close to the scarred walls of the Watch Fortress. There are dozens of Deathwatch battle brothers who managed to teleport inside, and are wrecking stuff by chopping it with their swords and hammers. Stupid, but this is the Imperium of Man. Come, Lady Ezu. I demand as I walk back onto the bridge. We're going to deploy and help the Deathwatch capture that last hive ship. If anyone dies, I will be very aggravated. I ordered on the Voxnet, and began moving my Astartes in hunting squads, first squads close enough to support the Deathwatch, and then to more and more distant flesh hallways, with the grieving deployed last. Once the perimeters were cleared, the Tech Marines with their Guardian Walkers and the new Grav floating turrets followed. The easiest jobs were left to the Auxilia armed Sentinels. They also needed combat experience, but they weren't really meant to fight in confined spaces like a hive ship's interior. Maybe the Rambo clones? Sure, them too. And then, there was me. Oh well. Might as well stretch my muscles a little, and give the wolves some fun. Click. Stomp, stomp. At my side, Lady Ezu is crushing some small Tyrannid drone. With her foot. Woo. Lash howled with a terrifying timbre and ran forward at hyperspeed. Maybe he found a decent prey? Whoa. Canis asked smartly. Oh, right. I powered up my phase blade and ran forward as well. A pod of bubbling flesh exploded at my side, revealing a dozen gaunts. Slow and groggy from their accelerated birth, took me a single pass to slice them into steak-sized bits. Canis poked one of the steaks and smelled it cautiously. Grr. He decided and walked away. Definitely not edible. Click. The Inquisitor's combat team was returned to her, as she moved far too slow for me. And forward. A larger thing? Some spitting model. Canis deflected the spits with his shield and clawed the thing, by extending the phase claws in mid-swing and then retracting them as the paw landed. Flawless style, my puppy. Oh right. Brother Joeton will also want to join. Click. Don't board a Tyrannid ship without me again. He growled at me, looking warily around. Just testing my skill on some poor gaunts. Try to keep up, I shouted a bit emotional. And run. I could see why the rush of melee combat drew so many species to it. Orcs and Eldar, even some Necrons favored slicing things and experienced the fountain of blood and organs flying away. Joetan Khan leaned away and sliced at a shadow just as the tesseract detected a mass in motion at his side. Faye's blade blurred into 100 green arcs, and a pile of claws fell down, leaving only a declawed Tyrannid lictor staring in surprise at his missing limbs. Dangerous. I realized with a start. Damn invisible monsters. Damn, I murmured in real awe. I trained for 2,000 years and wasn't even half as fast. Maybe a third. Joetan wasn't called a blade master on a whim. As I said, I can only protect you if my sword is close enough. My bodyguard commented lightly, not even breathing heavily. I glanced at this left hand, where his ether detector lit up with another red light. Etheric signal, type 6, hidden. I heard a moment on my implant later, as Canis sliced at a wall on the other side. Another blur of claws and phase claws, and the other lictor was left just as declawed. Canis was showing off. Or. My wolf howled in victory, as he stepped on his prey's head. I still had so much to grow. These beasts were much too fast. Good boy. Onward. But carefully. I spoke a bit wary. Canis flared one claw and decapitated the lictor as he followed me at a sedate pace. I focused half of my mind on my space marines, and even helped a few Deathwatch guys in trouble. Taking an entire hive ship won't be so easy. A great prize, but hard work too. And indeed, it took 2 entire days to clean up the ship. My mind was a mess from the focus I had to spend to keep everyone alive, if not exactly perfectly intact. The wolves had their fun though, so maybe it was worth it. And even the Rambo clones did fine, matching my Astartes in kills, even without gene seed and extra organs. Not yet at the level of their progenitor, but they could only grow. A short cleaning session later, and I arrived at the inquisitorial enclave on the fortress, without the wolves or Astartes' retinue. This was not a show of strength but of diplomacy. The big stick could wait outside. Ordo Xeno's Inquisitor Carmelus met me with a stern face, not exactly pleased, but also rescued by my timely arrival. She won't be an obstacle. Lord Lancefire, she said in a polite voice. I nodded. Lady Carmelus. It was time to pay back a visit. Just in time as well. You've grown a bit. People were starting to wonder if you were a real Astartes, she observed with a smart voice. I just smiled and glanced at her side. Watch Commander. Brother Lancefire. What business do you have with the Deathwatch? Captain Mordigale asked in a steely voice. 2 things, maybe 3 if your Forge Master is not busy. I expect you received some reports about my blank Marine's conduct inside that hive ship? I said with a thumb pointing outside the walls. Phase blades, in enormous numbers. We only have a few in the entire Deathwatch. He admitted with slight envy. Yes. I was thinking to send a few blank lamenters to join your august organization. I can't be everywhere, but the Deathwatch is already protecting the border of humanity. I proposed with a wide smile. The Blood Angel captain grinned widely. That would be wonderful. How many? He asked with glee. The Deathwatch was always in need of more brothers. Let's say, 511 blank lamenters and 489 blank tech marines, maybe a couple blank apothecaries too. We are very short on librarians for now. I explained with a what can I do shrug. That exclamation mark ... Are they defective? The Inquisitor asked cautiously. The lamenters, of course not. Mutations cannot affect blanks. But, they are not primaris either. I explained in a more reasonable voice. I see. You're shifting to full primaris lineup. What of the others? There is no grieving chapter. Captain Mordigale asked with a frown. I took out my credentials and placed them on the marble table. Instantly, the Inquisitor transformed into an illuminated statue, as the warrant of trade glowed visibly from the Emperor's own writing. The lion head rosette burst outward with clavis engrams and inquisitional override codes, allowing me access to any Imperial installation. The Emperor was kind enough to allow me unrestricted rights over the Eastern Fringe, and anywhere else I may need. Of course, I can wait for confirmation if you need to ask him on Terra. I spoke with a soft voice. Put it away, please. The Inquisitor begged in a low tone. I stored the warrant back in its null box, leaving only the rosette on the table. So I decided to create more Lamentor's successors, as to better cover the immense fringe. Since they are both blank and Primaris, I believe they will do just fine. The Blood Angel wiped a blood tear from his eye, and just nodded at me. And the last fortress is truth, he uttered in devotion. Lady Ezu stepped next to me and placed her own rosette next to mine. I demand that Lord Lancefire be allowed to approach the Omega Vault. If it opens or not, that will be the Emperor's will. The Watch Commander and Master of the Vigil rose his eyes at the frail Inquisitor. You will be banned from my fortress evermore, Inquisitor. That kind of favor can only be spent once. I am not sorry. You saw the Tyranids for yourself, Lord Inquisitor Carmelus. We need a weapon to destroy them. Lady Ezu muttered in a defiant voice. You will burn, Ezu. If the last vault stays shut, I will burn you myself, the old woman declared with utter conviction. Lady Ezu was willing to risk everything, just to force the vault to open. Sometimes it did, if a crisis or new enemy appeared, so she released the Tyrannid prisoners kept by the Death Watch, causing some damage. Instead, their psychic screams attracted a nearby hive fleet, so Ezu ran away to bring help. It could be viewed as sabotage and calling for enemy support so she could escape. If the vault doesn't open, then she's a traitor to humanity. Calm down, ladies. Everything will be all right, for I am here. I quipped in pure Lancefire manner. If looks could kill, I admit, standing in front of the Omega Vault's armored door was quite intimidating. I have stood in front of far greater doors in my life, but none held the unknown as tightly as this one. On the adamantium glacis, there was a nice bas-relief depicting the Emperor strangling a serpent. Very religious motif, if slightly inaccurate. Obviously, the sculptor had not seen the monster with his own eyes, like I did. Void Dragon. I spoke softly, as I flipped open my null box and revealed the Ordo Sinister rosette. My clavis engrams should hold the highest authority in the Imperium, bar the Emperor himself. I was quite confident to open the vault. And soon, it did. Sinistra Manus Perceptor, Chamber Occidentalis. Welcome to the end. A machine spirit voice spoke via my implant as the vault began to open. Glad to see you recognize my credentials, Omega. You may access the PEF/M41 files. I answered as I stepped inside, and walked through the lonely halls. The conditions are not met to open Vaults 1 through 5. Vault 6 would pertain to your credentials directly. Vault 7 through the 9th of May also be of use. The Omega Spirit added as it opened a distant door and made the etheric detector light up in warning etheric signals, Type 5, Major, Stasis. While the Tesseract showed me the 6 biopods, their content was absolutely fabulous. Alpha Psychers, maybe even Alpha Plus, and 6 of them too. A full set of replacement batteries for my Psi Titan. And already loaded up in shoulder socket pods, just like Sabates had. Only 6? I have 2 Psi Titans with me. I muttered, a bit disappointed. Prediction T engine has not computed a secondary deployment or its survival if it did. Do you have anything to replace the contents? Omega asked, sounding sad. Such an amazing prediction too. But the Speranza did repair Polaris Albedalac, the King of Terrors, and even fitted a new arm to Sabates, should I ever need to fist something big. I thought for a moment and then smiled inward. I could spare 6,000 phase blades for a future crisis. Click. The Alpha Psychers with their pods vanished in my good Tesseract and were replaced with 6,000 Catan blades. There. 6,000 phase blades, in perfect condition. But, not for Dark Angels. I demanded as I walked towards the next door. Sorry, but I didn't trust those guys. The next door opened and showed me a hololith table that lit up as I entered the room. There aren't many humans that will even know what the serpent is. But you do, Peflansfire. The Noctis Labyrinth on Mars holds a terrible secret, and this is the key to defeat it, if it ever awakens. The Omega Spirit explained in a patient voice. The Emperor is back and well, Omega. Still, a weapon that can kill an intact Catan has a huge value. Those Catan phase blades would just melt at his touch. I said, a bit awed. Are you going to take it? The spirit asked in a doubtful voice. Yes, but not for the Void Dragon. I already dealt with that. However, there is also the outsider Catan, out in that Dyson sphere. I've been told by Sir Gorak that it shows signs of activity recently. I spoke with a wary voice. Being slightly smarter now also meant I understood the meaning of the laughing god. He wanted me to kill another god, a cannibal star god this time. After all, I did the impossible once before. I just logged the stellar coordinates and then deleted the map. Right on the other side of the galaxy, in the halo stars. That was going to be fun, whatever this Quanique weapon was. It sure sounded Elder, something about gods. It kind of fit though. Now, what to leave behind? I did have a hololith table here, so an idea sparked a moment later. Vault 7, so 7 STCs of major importance in a crisis. It took a minute to upload and encrypt the priceless STCs, then add a few hexagrammic data wards on the memory banks, just in case some chaos infiltrator got in here. Those STCs, ancient yet complete. I was not wrong to give you the map. Omega spoke with a rather impressed voice. Let me know if you want an upgrade with hexagrammic wards. I'm a decent texorcist these days, if not quite the best. I proposed as made my way towards the next vault. It would mean opening the last vault. Omega hesitated. You've already read my files, I said cheerfully and waved my hand in the air. The predictor engine cannot fathom you, Sinistramanus. But I also saw what you did outside my walls. You can already take anything you want, and nobody can stop you. Omega mused gently, perhaps for itself. I just sighed. Even such a powerful machine spirit was expecting me to be a monster. The next vault opened to reveal 8 alien artifacts, a few quite familiar, and the rest not. These items are absolutely useless here. Not even this tiny nexus arrangement can be used by the humanity. I commented in a dour tone. I peeked inside, to find it holding an army of flayed ones, ready to slice open anyone silly enough to try and open the pocket dimension. Or infect an entire Necron crown world with the Flayer virus. Of course. You have even stronger ones. Storage units, like my predictor says? Omega asked, curious. Some kind of dimensional virus that only affects Necrons in this one. Infects them with the Flayer virus and makes them try to eat flesh, non-stop. Zombie robots. I hummed dourly, and placed the world-ending weapon in my pouch. Data logged and confirmed with kill team observations. You would make an excellent Deathwatch commander. Omega observed with some respect. I will leave 1,000 of my lamenters on this fortress before I go. Blank Marines are well protected against most warp phenomena. I added as I slowly went through the rest of the items, as Lash had predicted, a Catan shard lay imprisoned into another Tesseract pyramid. That will be a touchy reunion. A phase_shifter stood useless next, awaiting someone that may use it once more to become phased and invulnerable, for a short time. I once gave one just like this to Trazin in a trade. I could bet I was able to use it myself, one day. The cloak was likely the same, a cloak _of the Catan, used to empower oneself with the Catan's powers. Surely worth a try. The sphere-shaped artifact was likely an orb of eternity, able to repair any machine with its mere presence. If I ever wanted to become Omnissiah, I just had to use it on Mars, and all the primitive priests as their broken machines mended at my touch. The sand clock-shaped one was uncertain, but likely linked with time effects. Maybe a fabled chronometron. The rest were unknown for now, but Lash will surely know, and may even tell me. It was clear now someone, or perhaps an entire Space Legion from the old days, had looted a major Necron tomb, and got away with a wealth of artifacts that they had no use for. Decent stuff here. Meant to be used by Necrons, I said with a low tone. You'll like the next vault then, Omega said as I searched for 8 artifacts to replace the loot. I decided on a spread of 8 portable Nostari and Demiurge crest shields and 8 plasma axes and hammers as well. Space Marines did enjoy smashing things just like the dwarves. And sometimes, people needed something immediate to use. And so, you do have ancient artifacts too. Enough to prepare a kill team. Those crests must be shield emitters? Omega asked, curious. Precursors to our iron halos, I think. Much stronger as well. I spoke as I walked into the next vault. A vambrace with 9 orange dots lit dimly stood on a marble dais. It resembled the clavis vambrace of the Watch Commander, but with 9 extra things. I predict you will be able to track and recover the _blade_ of infinity with this prediction engine. 6 spatial coordinates and 3 temporal. Omega spoke in a hopeful voice. The ancient ship? I muttered in confusion. I did vaguely recall something about this lore bit, but it was sparse. An old Federation ship. The name held much promise though. Ah. I was correct. You even know what the name means. I picked the right person for the job. Omega exclaimed proudly. I nodded as I searched my inventory for something appropriate. 9 vials of Primarch blood. But I didn't have samples from 9 Primarchs, sadly. 9 more STCs? Already done that. 9 weapons? I stared at the marble dais and measured it for height. Just about right. A floating Astarius tank appeared just a centimeter above the marble dais. Perfect. Now, how did it work? My implant sent the right instructions and the tank powered both its shields, with shield protecting it from touch or damage, while the inverted void shield kept it invisible to the eyes and any auspex. I clapped my hands for a prank well done. There were 9 levels in hell after all. As I walked out, puffing in my head, the Omega machine joined me in laughter. An inverted void shield? Quite the test for any smug forge master. Well, this was fun, Omega. I guess this is where we part. Too bad you think so little of me. I found 4 Primarchs and returned them to service. Even helped the Emperor walk again. I uttered with sincere sadness. Maybe Vault 1 will be of use after all. Just take him to the Emperor. Omega said in a low, secretive voice. As the last vault opened, I peeked inside to find a large stasis pod, holding a gigantic human impaled with a glass icicle. His skin was fully black and his red eyes wide open.